Dante's transition from the terrace of the gluttonous to the terrace of the lustful gives occasion to present a tremendously complicated philosophy in beautifully apt language. As Dante inquires how it is that the shades of souls can become emaciated in the terrace of the gluttonous, Statius explains how a human is created, which necessarily requires that the appropriate context for human sexuality be articulated. Canto XXV abounds in sexual imagery. Dante describes his urge to inquire as like that of a stork trying to flutter from the nest. For centuries, the stork, because of its monogamous mating habits, has been the symbol of sexual purity. Dante then says that his desire to question was kindled, then spent, perhaps suggesting that he is trying to curb his desires, having just witnessed the plight of the gluttonous. Virgil goes on to encourage Dante to ask anyways, and in the process mentions Meleager. Meleager is a Greek hero who was fated to die when an enchanted firebrand was burned. For years his mother had hidden the firebrand for his protection. Later, she incinerates it after he kills her two brothers during a dispute about whether Meleager is right to award a prize hide to Atalanta. Such a gift is in a sense unchaste. The resulting family violence shows how essential sexual purity is to peace and loyalty. In order to explain how a soul may become emaciated in the afterlife, Statius must first explain how a person comes to exist with an eternal and personal soul. The description includes the process of sexual reproduction, the conclusion that there is no organ for intellect, and the beautifully mysterious lines, "The first mover turns toward it with joy, unseen so much art in nature, and breathes into it new spirit, vigorous, which draws all that is active in the fetus into its substances, and becomes one soul that lives and feels and has self-consciousness. That what I say may leave you less perplexed, consider the sun's heat, that when combined with sap that flows from vines is then made wine." Just like the best medieval philosophy, these lines fuse the Christian and Aristotelian imaginations. What is described is the ontological transformation of a sea sponge to an animal, to a human, as formed by God, that takes place in just the same way that by the miracle of God, wine is transubstantiated into Christ's blood, a phenomenon that Dante then likens to the fermentation of grapes into alcoholic wine. The wine imagery, too, recalls Dionysus, the Greek god of wine, and who is often associated with fertility and infancy. At the conclusion of Canto XXV, the penitents are heard chanting in the purifying fires what you hear now.
Sume Deus clementiae, mundique factor machinae, qui trinus amor numine, unusque firmas omnia, nostros spiritus.
Our reins and hearts in pity heal, and with thy chastening fire anneal. Gird thou our loins, each passion quell, and every harmful lust expel. The penitents conclude with Virum non cognosco, Mary's line, "I know not a man," from Luke 1:34. In this painting of the scene, we see in the background a white dove, the symbol of the Holy Spirit by whom Mary is impregnated. As Mary says, "I know not a man," she is touching her breast, expressing the intimacy of the moment. At the same time, she extends her other hand outward, as though to begin that intimate embrace. What becomes clear in this canto is not that human sexuality is a consequence of man's fallen state. Rather, human sexuality is a beautiful thing that, employed in the appropriate context, produces life, loyalty, and freedom. When sexuality is practiced outside of marriage, the couple engages in an act of burning passion without any thought of the human life their action is designed to create. It is the willful rejection of God's design for human sexuality. In order to be purified of their burning passion, the lustful penitents must enter the burning flame that burns hotter than any passion. Just as they allowed their physical passions to consume them at the expense of their soul's well-being, now they must allow the spiritual fire to consume them at the expense of their physical well-being. Correcting for these excesses further demonstrates that celibacy is not the virtue that Dante celebrates here, but rather chastity, that is the appropriate practice of sexuality between husband and wife.